Now the last thing that we have to go through. So we've seen the pastel. Yeah. Porter's diamond, not covered in your BT exam. We've seen the value chain and we've seen the value network. We need to go to the 5 forces now. Okay. So let's go to look at Porter's 5 forces. It's called 5 forces, but I like to give it a different name. I like to call it 4 forces. Because there's really only 4. The 5th one is the conclusion. But for BT, you don't have to write a conclusion, right? You're only doing multiple choice questions. So I'm going to put something in the middle. Then I'm going to put the first one here. Okay. So the first force is called threat of new entrants, connected to this entry barriers. And I'm going to call barriers to entry. Like in Super Mario. In Super Mario, a barrier is if you go to a concert, you have those metallic things that stop the crowd to go to the stage. You cannot go. That's a barrier. So you have barriers to entry. So if you want to, Porter's 5 forces is to analyze industries, whether you should go or not into an industry as a company. Is it too competitive? Is it attractive industry to go and do business? Well, you look at these 4 things then. First one is threat of new entrants. And I say it's called the 4 forces. The 5th one will be in the middle there. So a barrier to entry, if you want to go to make a new drug, pharmaceuticals, medical company, you can go if you want. Yeah, fine. But you will need a lab, a laboratory, some scientists, some FDA approval by the government. So it's going to be extremely expensive to set up a lab. So that's the barrier to entry. Not everybody can set up a pharmaceutical company in their living room. No, there's a huge barrier to entry, which is very good for the existing players, the existing pharmaceutical companies already in that industry. The next one. I'm going to say power of buyer. And then power of supplier. So here is when you have a lot, you have one customer versus many small customers. So if your company only has one customer with a huge contract which covers all your sales, if that customer goes away, your business is done. So the power of that buyer is huge. On the other hand, if you have like a coffee shop and you have many customers who pay a very small amount as a service, a coffee, if one customer goes away, it's okay. Right? They don't have much power over you. It works on the other side too. Power of supplier. One supplier or many suppliers. So it's also linked to the rarity of something. If there's only one supplier who sells the thing you need, right? Or if there is already thousands of companies that can replace that thing you need. You see, the power dynamic is very different. And the last thing is the threat of substitutes. Now be careful, substitutes is not a competitor product. Like Samsung or Galaxy versus iPhone. These are competing products. No. A threat of substitute is very different. A substitute is something that will solve the same problem. For example, you need to go to Japan and you're in the USA. Well, competing products like the Galaxy phone and the iPhone would be American Airlines versus Japanese airline. You'd need to decide which ticket you buy, which airline company. They're competing. A substitute is something that would solve the problem you're trying to solve in a different way. For example, you can go to Japan, buy plane, boat, car, train. So you see, all these things are very different companies, very different service, very different product, but ultimately they will be able to solve your problem. It's kind of like Netflix and Blockbuster here. You know, Blockbuster was renting DVDs, Netflix was streaming video online. Different industries, it was not really competing against each other. It was not eating on their turf, or so they thought. Blockbuster thought. And now today Blockbuster is gone. Why? Because Netflix was a substitute. It wasn't a competing company, but it was solving the same problem, which was consuming movies. So when you have all these four forces, you can write down the fifth force, which is industry rivalry. So here is how intense the competition is. How intense is the fight? How big is the fight? And for Porter 5 forces, you need to give a score of high-low for each part. For example, I will analyze an industry and then I will say, this is high, this is low, this is low, this is high, and I will therefore say it's high. So you need to give a score of high-low to each 5 area. Okay?